Hey, Alli, what's the fastest way to start a massive argument?
Probably to talk about nutrition because that is a hotly debated topic.
Absolutely. And today our guest is registered dietitian Anne Crecelius. She's going to set the record straight on a lot of things.
But before we dive in, we want to give a shout out to our Girls Talk Healthy Aging listener, Miss Annabella Crenshaw. Thanks for listening. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey.
How exciting. We have a dietitian with us today who has lots of experience that can clear up lots of misinformation and just help us to understand a little bit more about what we should be eating and how we should be approaching food. So welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, Miss Anne Crecelius.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you all taking your time out to chat with me about nutrition.
And did I say your last name?
You did. You said it correctly. It's hard. Yes. Crecelius. Yes.
Crecelius, and you have over 30 years in the nutrition world. So first thing I want to know is just how you got into studying nutrition, learning about nutrition, why that was of interest to you.
Ever since I can remember, I've been very involved in athletics and sports, and it honestly started in a high school class. We were talking about, PE class. It was nutrition, and it just intrigued me as to how the body takes the food that we eat, breaks it down, and fuels everything we do on a cellular level. And just going into college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but was still very active and didn't even really understand what a registered dietitian was all about. That was 30 years ago. No one really talked about nutrition. So I knew someone else that was in the program, and I spoke with her a little bit about it, and it sounded something that I would like to pursue. So I made an appointment with an advisor and enrolled myself into all of the classes that I needed. And as a registered dietitian, we take all of the chemistries and math and science that many of the pre-med students, pre-pharmacy students, and physical therapy people take. So with that, after you have all of your prerequisites, then you go into your curriculum for nutrition. And then after that, nowadays you go into an internship, and it's over 1,000 hours of an internship. And then you have to set for a registration exam. So as a registered dietitian, we really are the nutrition experts. We are all evidence-based, and we fill many different roles in healthcare and even in the community. So I just have been very passionate about nutrition my whole life.
And you must have a lot of cringy moments on watching social media and seeing all the misinformation and disinformation out there related to nutrition. And I often say that if you want to start a war, either talk politics or religion or nutrition.
You're right. It is interesting to me how nutrition has become politicized almost. And, looking through social media, there is some good information out there, but there's a lot of information that just doesn't have any evidence behind it. So how do you weed that out, and how do you let the masses know what's good information and what's bad information? I feel like is something I struggle with every day.
Yeah, and I this is one thing that we like to do on the podcast is talk to people like you to help our listeners determine who do we listen to. Because as you say, a dietitian is possibly the gold standard of a nutrition expert, given all that you have to, all the hoops you have to jump through to be certified or registered as a dietitian. And my understanding is that even medical doctors, they have the physiology, but then it's not applied into nutrition. So, we have a lot of, say, chiropractors on social media that are spouting out nutrition information, and, lots of doctors. But how do you figure out, like, what are some of the tips and tricks that you might use to be able to figure out, well, is this believable or not?
Right. On social media, unfortunately, you can't have a personalized conversation with these people. They are usually just trying to catch your attention with a sound bite, with something easy, with something that catches your attention. But if you go into any situation where you are talking with someone that isn't a dietitian and that is giving out nutrition advice, just having that honest honest conversation with them about their ideas and where they get their information and what types of people they work with and what outcomes do they have. So just really being your own advocate is just something that at this point you have to do nowadays, because there's so much information coming at you and you have to be your own advocate to weed out what is good and what is bad.
We're going to interrupt this interview for just a second because we've got something we want to make sure that you know.
If you're struggling with your health, with your fitness, if you don't know where to start, or you know what to do and you're not doing it, we're here for you.
And all you need to do to get our help is to reach out to Shawna and I at our email, sapodcast23@gmail.com. And we're happy to help, and we will be in touch. Now back to the show. And it's tough because, one of the things I think about with social media, a lot of the people that get the most followers and the most attention are the people that are the most entertaining or the most controversial, or there's a reason that that the algorithm is feeding that to more people. And so nutrition at its core, I mean, how, I don't know, a lot of the basic rules of nutrition probably aren't like super sexy and exciting, and I don't know, are they? Maybe they are. Maybe tell us, Anne.
Probably will not be very happy to report that it isn't that exciting or a gotcha moment. But how I feel about it and how I speak to those that I've counseled in the past is, you want to have just all the food groups every single day. It's very simple. We need to prioritize nutrient dense foods for everyday use, and the foods that aren't as nutrient dense, that don't give us the fuel of our body, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, maybe if they're heavy on the calories and the fat, or then those are occasional foods. So it's not about good food and bad food, but just trying to have a balanced diet every single day as much as possible.
And I heard you say that it's simple. And one thing that I tell clients is it's simple, but it's not easy. It's like actually preparing real food. It's much easier to take a magic pill that'll give you all the vitamins and nutrients that you need than it is to actually go to the store and get real high quality food and get your taste buds used to real high quality, dense in vitamins and nutrients food. That's not easy.
Right. I agree with that. It is. It does take time, and it takes, habits and just little steps every single day to change your habits. A lot of food is behavioral. So not only are we looking at nutrition, but we are also looking at food behaviors. And a lot of food, emotional distress or celebration, is all about food. And so really looking at that and what our patterns are, and, realizing that food is here to fuel our body. So the real food that you can get, the better it is for absorption of your nutrients, whether it's fiber, vitamins and minerals, protein. If we can get real food, then that's going to be the best way to fuel our body. But it's all about just those small, everyday choices and habits that we reprogram ourselves.
And why is that real food is better? Like, what are we getting from that we're not getting from maybe some of the quick and easy or emotional type foods that we
Right.
might choose?
Right. I think that just the different compositions of fruits and vegetables where the fiber is, soluble and insoluble fiber, and just the vitamins and minerals are more bioavailable for us than if we were to take just a bunch of supplements. I'm not saying that supplements are a negative thing, because they do come in very handy if you need to get more protein in, or if you have really tried to balance your diet out that you just don't think you're getting the nutrients in, then taking a multivitamin and mineral supplement isn't the end of the world. So just really, thinking about it from that standpoint, to make whatever you do the best that you can do to fuel your body.
And I think what you just said of doing the best that you can do, because
Mhm.
I think some people get hung up on perfection,
Mhm.
and if they blow it by lunch, then it's like, well, they'll just, I say kitchen sink it. It's like, well, just whatever. I blew it. I might as well eat whatever and start eating healthily on Monday. So it's just kind of like, when do you start eating more healthily? If you, maybe make some bad choices. And I always say, well, maybe just the next snack, the next meal. The other thing I wanted to touch on, that I liked what you said, is you said, basically you said food is not good or bad. There's no morality to food. So talk a little bit about like how people feel food can be good and bad, and where that can lead you.
Right. I think it is kind of what you talked about as well. Um, we talk about, foods that maybe are high in fat or high in sugar as being bad foods. But if you my kids always laugh at me because I always say it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. So having that mindset when you go into it is going to be more helpful than putting things in a bad and good category. So, with the holidays coming up, we have celebrations or, birthday parties, and I don't think anyone should restrict themselves. If you are restricting yourself, you're more likely setting yourself up for failure. So, being just gentle on yourself and giving yourself grace so that you're able just to give yourself the nutritional food on a daily basis. And it is more or less just taking those small steps and not making yourself feel guilty. Again, looking at our food behaviors around how we eat, or patterns of behavior of how we are eating, and trying to think about how we can maybe change those. So if maybe you didn't eat as best as you wanted to one day, maybe you went out to a restaurant and you maybe overdid it on chips and salsa or something. I'm just speaking from personal experience. Then maybe, like you said, breakfast the next morning, I'm going to have good protein. I'm going to have a good complex carbohydrates that includes a lot of fiber. So then, just getting myself back to where I want to be.
I always say that success happens when you're feeling good, and diets seem to have kind of a punitive nature.
Mhm.
So, I overdid it on the chips and salsa, so I beat myself up, and then I'm not going to feel good about it's harder for me to make a good choice when I'm feeling bad about the choices that I previously made. So maybe just celebrate the good choices. And like I really love that a registered dietitian is supporting all the things that I would tell, and probably Alli would agree, right, Alli? This is what we would tell our clients.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes I will tell them, they don't need to eat all the things at holidays, but
Yeah,
not restricting, but like just, have a
yeah.
dab of this and a dab of that. And,
Right.
Yeah,
It
it
is
makes me want to
everything
go
in
crazy.
moderation,
Yeah, but
just
it's also like you said, it's really what we do the majority of the time. Even if I went crazy on the holidays, but I ate well the rest of the year, that's
Mhm.
not going to ruin me. However, it could lead me to start wanting more of those kind of foods. If once I get that taste for it, that could be a
Right,
downfall for me. So I have to, we have to know ourselves and how much we can indulge and be able to get to back on track if we're going to be eating things
right,
that are outside of that box of real foods with higher quality. Yeah,
right,
that would be what I
right.
would tell clients. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. I think it's an important piece of it to, give yourself grace with your choices and not beat yourself up over it. Because in the long run, if most of our decisions are good, then we're going to be on the right track.
Yeah. And one question I have is just I think that for most of us, I know for me, the more I've learned about food, the more it affects the choices I make. And so I was wondering if you could even take it back to like that cellular level and just the basics of why do we fuel? What does it do for us? How does the fuel that we eat affect different things? And if I'm going and doing a marathon versus I'm sitting at my desk all day, how does that fuel affect me?
That's a really good question. If you're training for something specific, you can look at fueling your body differently. So across the board, I think that most of us do need more protein in our diet. So protein, the building block of muscles, helps keep that muscle mass good and secure, helps build more muscle. So making sure you get adequate protein, whether you're sitting at your desk or if you are training for something specific.
And for
And then
women, let me interrupt just real quick because I think this is important. A lot of women, when they hear muscle, like what does that mean when you're saying this protein? How does that impact me as I mean, and I have more muscle than a lot of people just because of my lifestyle. But for someone who
right,
just wants to be healthy and they want to look good in their clothes and feel good, what does that mean?
as far as
I need more protein and that's going to make me build
needing
muscle. What does that mean to me who is not who may not have the same understanding of nutrition and how food affects me that you have, Anne?
Okay. So, proteins are amino acids, and amino acid, when they're broken down, and amino acids do many things in our bodies and they're the building blocks of protein. And so how that affects our body is that lean protein helps keep our muscle mass intact. So if you are maybe on a eating pattern that where you're trying to decrease the amount of calories you have. So sometimes if you're not eating protein to protect your muscle, you can actually break down the muscle in your body for fuel. So, your body, if you decrease the amount of calories that you're eating, your body's going to get the fuel from somewhere. So if you don't have a lot of fat stores, then it's going to break down your protein stores to use for fuel.
And
So making sure,
why is that a problem if it breaks down my muscle?
we don't want to be weak, especially as we age. It protects our skeletal bones. And, I want to be able to lift the groceries. I want to be able to, still walk, or, I have also trained for many events and races. And so I want to just be as physically fit as I can and be able to, get up and down off the chair. And so making sure that you're giving your body the nutrients that it needs so that you can continue to do that as you age. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's
A
important,
lot of people, when they hear muscle, especially a lot of women, we just don't understand why that's important because some of us still, and that is changing, but some of us still have this idea that muscle is manly or going to make us look like a man. And so
Mhm.
understanding that we all have muscle and we all need
Right,
to maintain it and we're all losing it as we age and it's
right.
making us softer, squishier, saggier, draggier, and weaker. Yes, and
Weaker,
I love
right.
that you point out the strength thing and how we want to be able to function in life. So I thank you for expounding on that.
Right. And it's just even, just your posture. I want to make sure I sit up, straight. I want to be able to bring my groceries in from my car. I want to be able to move, a chair or a table. And so making sure that I just have, the strength and the muscle to do that. We're not all, bodybuilders on here. We just want to have enough muscle to be able to function on a daily basis. So protecting that muscle mass
And we
is
can't
important.
move without muscle. I mean, that is our
Right.
mover. If you want to move in life, you need your muscles.
Right.
And I think it's important for people to connect the dots because both Allie and I are also fitness coaches. We also coach with nutrition, but for people to connect the dots that yes, movement is important, but if we're not supporting it with the right nutrition, that it can almost be counterproductive because if we're moving but not giving our body the building blocks to repair and recover from that movement, like it's all connected. And so I think Allie was just really trying to get
Right.
those words just out of your mouth. So it's just not
Right.
she and I.
Right.
The same.
Definitely. I mean, if you don't get it in your diet, your body is very smart. It'll take it from your body. So if you're not giving yourself enough calcium, you're going to leach it out of your bones and you're going to make your bones weaker. So your body is very efficient and smart machine. The better you fuel it, the less fatigue, the more energy, and the more things you can do. And as we age, to me, that's the most important thing. I still want to be able to get up and do my activities. I don't want to be limited by, not having enough energy.
And honestly, I feel that some people treat their car better than their own body because they might be like, well, I need to have this kind of fuel and I've got to get oil changes and this and that, but they're not really paying attention to what's on their plate. And you can go buy a new car, but you can't buy a new body. And
Right.
and you don't start to notice things breaking down until you're injured. And one thing you mentioned, for example, is bone density. And we don't really notice bone density until, oh, I've broken a bone.
Right.
So there's so much you can do proactively. So I'm really happy that you did mention protein. What else would you say as we age that is you know something that should be on everybody's radar?
I think that making sure you get enough fiber in. The American Heart Association recommends 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. And with a lot of our, diets, using diets in a general term, how we eat, we are not getting enough fiber in our meals. So making sure that you're, self-aware of getting that fiber in your diet every single day, whether it's from complex carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, just anything, that has fiber in it. But it helps you in so many different ways.
And can you comment a little bit on carbs? Because I think as women age, so many of my clients and people that I talk to are just, you know, because weight is and managing weight is a concern for so many people. Women tend to think, well, I'm just going to cut out carbs. Can you just clarify why we need carbs and how maybe cutting carbs is not your best strategy for weight loss?
I agree with that. I think carbohydrates are very important. And when I look at the diets that are very popular out there, a lot of them are, very low in carbohydrates. So your brain uses carbohydrates, glycogen for fuel. So we need carbohydrates just for our brain to function. I mean, and that doesn't even, get into our muscles or our, if we're, you know, wanting to train for an activity or something, you do need those carbs to fuel your body. That is the main source. Glycogen is the main source of energy that your body uses. So cutting down those carbs is not necessarily a great idea in my mind. And from carbs, we do get fiber. We do get if you are choosing complex carbohydrates, you are getting a lot of your fiber from that. So I think it's important. I think where a lot of people maybe have hesitation about adding carbs back into their diet is that they see it as weight gain, or that it increases their glucose levels, therefore having weight gain on that. As we age, for women especially, we lose our estrogen, and so we become more insulin resistant, and so therefore we're not able to really, our body loses a little bit of that when our glucose levels spike. Then since we don't have the estrogen, then we aren't able to get the insulin going to get that back in our blood to have those glucose levels stabilize. So I think that that's where some of these low carbohydrate diet, their mindset comes from about weight gain. But again, if you're choosing complex carbohydrates in a moderate amount, there is a place for it, and it is fueling your brain as well as your muscles. So I still think it's a very important part of your overall intake.
I think it's really important for us to define what complex carbohydrates are and simple carb, because I can tell you from working with ladies, they come to me and tell me that they've cut out carbs. And then I look at them and I say, what did you eat? And they tell me, and I'm like, no, you didn't. That banana was a carb. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it, but you didn't cut out carb. But in their mind, oh, fruit has carbs. Yeah,
Right.
fruit is a carb. But so we need to define that for people and help. I think that would be clarifying rather than just talk about these terms that we know what they mean. But the
Generalized.
general population does not know what the heck.
Right. So carbohydrates, the things that we think about the most, bread, okay, bread, rice, but then like you said, like bananas, apples, a lot of, fruits are high in carbohydrates. They just are. Corn, peas, they can be high in carbohydrates as well. So, but choosing sugar is a carb. We'll talk about the ones that are maybe more not as nutrient dense. Sugar is one of the, syrup, all of the chocolate, all of those are the ones that don't have great nutrition properties to them. They taste good, but as again, occasional foods or celebration foods, there is a place in your diet for them, but choosing more of the complex ones like the whole grains or the or fruits, and then the vegetables that are higher in carbs, those are the ones that are going to have the best fiber and the vitamins and minerals that we need.
And when someone says, well, I don't want to eat fruit because it's got sugar in it, they need to be reminded that that sugar is wrapped in fiber.
Right.
So choosing an apple over a donut, it's really apples and oranges. Like, it's not the same comparison.
Right.
So, and it's, that sugar is wrapped in fiber and micronutrients and vitamins. And so I think that's where people need to delineate, if that's the word. I'm saying it wrong. But also finding a sustainable way to eat, because I think so many people are, if I'm not going to have carbs, I'm not having any carbs. And then all of a sudden I'm having all the carbs.
Right.
Because it's really hard to live life without any carbs. So getting back to that good and bad foods and taboo foods, it kind of can lead to binge eating. Comments?
I do see that, yes. And so just, backing it up and reminding yourself this is a lifestyle. I am here, that's what what is sustainable? What can you sustain? I think a lot of these diets, they sound great, and I'm going to, do a carnivore diet, but how sustainable is that? Are you getting the fiber? Are you getting the, calcium and the vitamin and minerals that you need? Well, probably not. So I don't think that that's as sustainable as that we had hoped. So, backing it up and looking at, asking yourselves, it's having a hard conversation with yourself, and, trying, there isn't a magic pill or shot. There just isn't. we can get on that tangent as well, but there isn't a magic pill or shot. It is still just those consistent habits and having an honest conversation with yourself about what you can sustain. How do you want to feel? What are your goals? If you're, I want to be healthy. I want to feel good as I age. I want to have energy. I don't want to sit in front of my TV or my phone and scroll all day. I want to be active. And so how can I get to that point? What does that look like? Okay, well, if I'm interested in lifting weights, then I want to have substantial protein. I want to be able to move around a lot. I want my bones to be healthy. I want to play tennis or pickleball. Well, I need to make sure I'm getting vitamin D and calcium to support my bone health. So just again, looking at the goals and how you want to, what is the rest of your life, how that should look to you.
Yeah,
And
like a goals driven
right,
approach to life
right.
and food.
It is
Go
right.
ahead.
Oh no, I mean, it's simple, but the behavior is hard.
Yeah, changing the behaviors. I have two questions that I want to ask, and I'll just ask one now. But these are two nutrition kind of based questions that I've gotten from real clients this week. So I'm going to ask them as they were asked to me, because I'm just curious what your response will be. I know what mine was, but so the first one, what do you think about intermittent fasting? That was the first question I got this past. This is two questions I got this past week. So what do you think about intermittent fasting, Anne?
I think that there were studies that did show that there was weight loss with it. How I feel personally about it and how I would counsel someone if they asked me about it, I think the overall indication was that when they looked at people doing intermittent fasting, they were overall taking in less calories. So therefore, that's why maybe the weight loss was seen. So, I don't think that your body is meant to go without food for an extended period of time. And we see that because, again, like I said, if your body's not getting what it needs, it's going to take it from your skeleton and your muscles. And if you fuel your body on a consistent basis, then your body doesn't really think it's starving. So it doesn't go into that panic mode of, I don't know where my next meal is going to come from. And I've worked with people over my career that, they were in like a 12-week exercise program, and I was the nutrition part of this program. And I had to talk a lot of them into eating more. We need to eat more. You need to eat breakfast. You need to make sure that your breakfast includes protein and carbohydrates. You need to have snacks. And it was amazing how many of those people came back to me and said, I've lost weight. I ate more, but I lost weight. So not only did we change, maybe what they were eating, the composition of their meals, but also how they were eating. And so if you're fueling your body, you're going to have more energy to be able to do things. So again, all of that, that's how we burn calories. We burn calories by, moving our bodies. We burn calories by breaking down food. We burn calories by breathing and our heart beating. So all of that is your body's need to continuously have fuel. So I do understand why people like intermittent fasting. And again, if I'm not here to tell you that that's not the best thing for you. I'm just here to give you maybe different things that we can look at as to why it's better to fuel your body throughout the day.
Okay, the second question. This is going to change gears a little bit. Thank you for answering that one.
Sure.
Where does fat go when you lose weight? Where does it go?
That goes. It dissolves. I think the thermogenic effect, it does burn, it goes away. So, that's why when people lose a lot of weight, they still have all that skin. So, looking at like subcutaneous fat, which is like underneath the skin, and then visceral fat, which is the fat that probably is less healthy. That's the fat that surrounds all of your organs. So when you're looking at losing fat and decreasing your calories and maybe changing your composition of your meals, then losing that fat, it does dissolve. It's a thermogenic effect and it goes away.
So it dissolves where? Where does it go? That
Where
was,
does it go?
yeah. What happens to it?
That's a really good question. I think that it does get, just filtered through your body.
Yeah,
Answer.
I thought that was a good question.
That's a very good question. Yes, but you're right, because you see it in your appearance that you have lost fat. And so what happens to it? Where does it go? But it's just your body's burning and excreting it.
Yeah, and I think of it like a car. Like you don't see that gas is leaving the car when you're
Right.
driving, but it's
Yeah.
exiting as you're burning the fuel. It's exiting through
Right.
your body, through breathing, through sweat, through waste, through all the places that things leave our body. Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
And I wanted to comment on your answer about intermittent fasting because I agree. I love it of what you said because, I don't want to tell someone like there's many ways to fuel yourself and you have to find the one that's right for you. There are some that are backed up by science more than others, but basically intermittent fasting is kind of like just creating that calorie deficit because you have this reduced eating window. But what I liked what you said is that fueling your body, you tend to have more energy. And people don't realize that if I feel more energized, I might actually burn more calories because I have a little more pep in my step. Because some people, when they go on a really low calorie diet, if they're on 1,000 calories, they don't really notice that like they are moving like a sloth. So
Right.
they're neat, their non-exercise activity thermogenesis, they're just calorie burning in general is just dampened so much. But if you're eating more, you're probably moving more.
Right.
I just wanted to comment on that and correct me if I'm wrong. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yes, yes, that's exactly where my mind was. That, a 1,000 calorie diet that doesn't even give you enough vitamins and minerals to meet your daily requirement. At the least 1,200 calories is what we recommend to get all your vitamins and minerals and other nutrients in. But even that just seems so low to me. Um, but if you aren't fueling your body, then I don't want to get up off the couch and do laundry. I don't want to drive to the grocery and walk across the parking lot. I mean, these are, very real life things that if you don't have the energy for, then you become, you just keep going down and down and down.
Can you talk a little bit about metabolism? Because many people will comment that, I've turned 40, I've turned 50, my metabolism has crashed. And, maybe you could comment on the Ponzer study and, what really does happen with our metabolism over time. Herman Ponzer, how
Okay.
his study pointed out that from age 20 to 60, our general metabolism does not change. And so that came out, I think, in Alli, do you remember the year? 2021. We can put it in the
Recent,
show
yeah.
notes. It's
Okay.
a fairly
Yeah.
recent study, but what are your comments on metabolism as we age? Because I have I have an idea of why metabolism changes because it does tend to change, but it's not for the reason people think.
So how I think about it, and it's interesting, I did think about this while we were preparing for the show, because I do think people will say, "Oh, I'm older, my metabolism is slowing down. That's why I'm gaining weight." So when we look up like what metabolism is, it's the breaking down of what you eat to fuel your body. So, there are and it, and metabolism can be different things as well. Like you burn calories, like I said earlier, with your breaking down the food, there's a thermogenic effect with that. There is, like breathing and heart beating that burns calories as well. So your metabolism slowing down, I think it's multifactorial as to, I think that's how we talk about it in a way that makes sense to us. Like my metabolism is slowed down. That's why I'm gaining weight. So we have said it so often that all of us understand what that means. But I don't think that that is exactly what that means. Like we are gaining weight because maybe we're not as active. Maybe we aren't eating healthier. Maybe we're, consuming more alcohol. Maybe, more of the calorie dense foods that don't have nutrients in them is kind of where I'm getting at. So I don't think it's that metabolism has slowed. I think that and then, with the women losing estrogen and being more insulin resistant, that is definitely a way that we gain weight as we age. Men's testosterone levels decrease. They gain weight because of that. So all of this, I think it's multifactorial. I agree with that. I come also from critical care in the hospitals. And we used to use an equation where we did look at calorie levels with age. And we have gotten away from that. And now we really look at just more of calories per kilogram of body weight. So that's how we figure out calories, like in a hospital setting, if somebody's very ill and we're trying to figure out calorie levels so that they don't totally catabolize and go into a malnutrition state. So less about age and more about other factors that can make you gain weight. That's kind
And
of
like
my thought.
joints, like we start having more joint problems, and
Right.
that's something I'm dealing with and realizing, and how much that slows us down. That happens when we start getting more frequently into those perimenopause, menopause, kind of that phase of life. So our bodies go through changes that
Right.
definitely can impact, and our sleep. Our sleep can change. And
Disrupted.
we know
Yeah.
that affects our foods that we eat, our cravings, our energy level, all those things. There's a lot that goes into how we are adapting to life
Right.
on our journey.
Right. And it is harder. And we are, I get that too. I don't have as much energy as I had when I was 20. I mean, that is just a fact. And again, for many different reasons. I don't want to oversimplify what we are all dealing with, and because it is challenging.
Yeah, but I think the metabolism question you're alluding to and Alli is added to is comes down to lifestyle. And a lot of people think, oh, nothing has changed, but it's the small things that it's the force multipliers that, oh, if you're a parent and your children are older, well, you're sitting down the entire meal. You're not chasing them around. And, that's such a nice thing, but you never, like, that just happens over the years.
Over
Or
time.
maybe, if you're a career person, maybe you're moving more at the beginning of your career. Maybe you're in administration and sitting more now. And people kind of forget about those little things. Or Alli, you're talking about sleep. Well, sleep, lack of sleep. Now I have all these cravings and I didn't even notice that I'm, craving these carbohydrates and snacky foods that I'm nibbling on a bit. So,
And our hormones start going kooky, and that totally affects our energy levels and zaps us and
appetite.
Right.
So
Right.
I think the good news is that our metabolism doesn't actually change, but our habits do, and we are in control of our habits if we become aware of them. So I think that's kind of good news.
I agree with that. I think that's a good way to look at it. And I was thinking, back when my kids were little, how often did I have like a 30-pound kid on my hip, while I'm cleaning the house? Well, I don't think I could, over time you get used to that. And so just now, what does that look like? I don't have that weight on my hip anymore, but maybe that means I go to the gym another day or something. So I think that we can make personal changes as we adapt to how our life has changed, but still with the mindset of this is my lifestyle now. This is what I want to do to keep myself healthy for as long as I can.
So what would, if someone is listening today and they're reflecting on their own nutritional journey and thinking, hey, I know I need to make some changes. What would be the first thing you would tell them? What would be the best shift for them? The smallest shift that would yield the biggest results, say, for health.
I think the very most important thing is adequate protein. I think protein, preserves your muscles. It keeps you full longer. I think that having adequate protein is the best shift you can make. Step one.
What does that look like? What does that look like? If I'm trying to get adequate protein and I'm listening, where do I get it? How much? What does that look like for me?
So we used to, the current recommendations are, 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So, that's just an easy, fast thing that we used to say. I usually tell the people that I counsel, and personally, I probably do double of that. So I'm probably doing 1.3 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. I consider myself active. I do lift weights 2 to 3 times a week. I recently trained for the Ironman. I am half Ironman. I am very active otherwise, but I still think that everyone needs to eat more protein, whether they're, not as active as they want to be, or if they're very active. And protein comes from, we typically think of animal sources. So lean meats, cheeses, and so some of the other plant-based options, they don't tend to have as dense of amount as an animal base, but I know we have vegetarians and vegans out there, so making sure that they get healthy protein in is very important too. And that's where I think about, supplements. So if you don't think you are eating enough protein, then having, a shake that has, I'm thinking about the ones that are 26 grams of protein, or, as a snack, just another way to get protein in, or whey powder or pea protein powder, adding those to like a smoothie or something, is a great way to get protein in. But I think that's probably the best shift you can make.
And if you had a wish for our listeners today, what would it be?
I think that just realizing that there is no magic pill or shot, no matter what anyone wants to tell you, and to give yourself grace and not have guilt over things that you may not have wanted to eat, or maybe some behaviors that you want to change. Just realize that it takes time, and small steps is what it's going to be. And it's, again, a lifestyle. This is something we all want to sustain. And if it's a lifestyle, then you're more likely to keep making those good choices.
And my wish would be that we take it just a baby step. This can all be overwhelming, I think, for a lot of folks. And nutrition is hard to wrap your mind around, and our behaviors around. It's hard to wrap both around. So my wish is that we just pick something small, and it doesn't have to be a big change. Maybe just looking at some protein, adding something, or maybe getting more fruit or vegetables, the stuff that we know, but just something little.
Yeah, and my wish is that people just become a little more aware of what's on their plate and make, just like you said, Alli, a slightly better choice today, and don't beat yourself up over it. There's always another day, another meal, another snack, and make that one a healthy choice.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.